So I woke up today with this very fun idea. I have been loving the new season of Bridgerton, which I know is maybe a little off brand for me, but the second half of the season comes out soon, which got me thinking I should see if I could thrift a Bridgerton style evening dress. Bridgerton takes place during the Regency era. The silhouette is pretty simple in terms of finding a thrifted item and modifying it to be in that style. And on top of that, it's prom season, which means the thrift stores are gonna have a ton of prom dresses. So let's see what we can find for a thrifted Regency era Bridgerton style prom dress. Let's hit the thrift stores.
Hands are trembling right now, right now. Deep blue water sea, afraid of jumping in right now, right now. 한 발을 내밀었어, 걱정이 많이 있어. It's a bit of love, yeah. It's a little tough, yeah. 담배를 물고 있어, 생각이 너무 깊어. Wow, it's looking too deep. It's a little rough, yeah. Overthinking if I belong.
Honestly, not as much success as I would have expected. Nothing really tickled my fancy. I did find these shoes though, which are gonna be good for my Tifa Lockhart cosplay. I've been searching for these, happy to finally find them. Gonna head home now. Tomorrow I will try a couple other thrift stores. Okay, I just made a kind of questionable decision in what I ended up buying, which was this purple and white floral dress. It was really giving like Regency Bridgerton vibes. It has like the sleeves that I want, so I don't have to like make them from scratch. But there was a purple dress I saw yesterday that I hope will have fabric that matches this, but it was at a different store. So I'm gonna head back to that store, see if I can find that purple dress, and then I think we're in business. We are in incredible shape to make this costume. If you couldn't tell, I went back to the other thrift store. I found the dress that I saw yesterday. These match exactly the way that I thought they would, and the vision is taking shape. Prior to finding the thrifted items, it was really hard to know exactly what the design was going to be because I didn't know what my material was going to be. So the question is, am I going to make a gown that I'd maybe wear to a ball? Or am I making something more casual that I'd wear to the modiste? Or that I'd wear to promenade with my potential suitors? But now that we have the material we're working with, I think this dress on its own definitely gives ball, but the shape is all wrong for this dress. It's a little bit too flared out. The waistline is a little bit too low, and this top is just not something that you would see in the Regency era. Regency dresses, in my opinion, aren't the most flattering silhouette on me, but we're doing it because we love Bridgerton.
Hello from editing, Leah. I just wanted to jump in and say, when I'm referring to Regency era dresses here, I'm specifically talking about what an untrained person is witnessing on a television show that I know is definitely not historically accurate. I don't actually know much about historical accuracy when it comes to Regency era dresses, so keep that in mind moving forward. I love to talk like I'm an expert, but I'm an amateur with confidence and delusion. Please enjoy kindly.
So for Regency era dresses, you would see the waistline begins basically right underneath the bust. This dress I'm wearing here, the waist is at where my natural waist on my body would be. That means we are not making a ball gown because we don't have enough material for a ball gown. So we introduced the second dress, which honestly on its own is feeling very Regency era. The sleeves was definitely something I was looking for. And then also the waistline is right here underneath the bust. And then of course the material is very fun. It's very casual. So there are things that work individually with both dresses. This dress definitely has the potential for a Regency era skirt, but needs a better top. And then this dress definitely has the right shape, but on its own is just too flimsy. So I will explain my design to combine them. And I actually got inspiration for this design from Bridgerton. season 2. Not only was this dress purple, but I felt like the silhouette of it is definitely something I could achieve with these two dresses. This dress looks like it is 2 parts, one dress on top of another. And so that is the way I'm going to be designing my dress. We're gonna Frankenstein it a little bit. So for the underlayer of the dress, we are going to use the top of the floral dress and attach it with that high under the bust waist using the skirt of this dress. Floral top, shiny lilac bottom. Then for the layer that goes on top, we are going to use the skirt of this dress. There is a center panel here that we're going to leave out so that the dress is open, shows the lilac skirt underneath, and it'll just flare around the sides and around the back. And then for the top of the dress, we are going to attempt, this is gonna be the hardest part of this project, we are going to construct our own top out of the scraps from the skirt. We definitely have to take the bottom in. It's a little bit too big on me. There's some pleats in the front that I think I'm actually going to take out, giving us more fabric. Whatever we cut off is what we're gonna use to make the top. So I'm hoping to make something actually kind of similar to this black top that I'm wearing here. Probably a thicker band on the shoulder, but a scoop neck like this so that you can see a little bit of this material poking out the top. And yeah, whatever we end up constructing from this material for the top, we'll attach it to the bottom and that will go on top. What's really good about both of these dresses, they both have zippers in the back. That's going to make switching the tops and bottoms, Frankensteining the dresses, a term I'm coining right now. The fact that both dresses have the same zipper placement is going to be helpful. I think this dress is going to be such a great nod to Bridgerton for 3 reasons. One, because our inspiration is Kate from Bridgerton, inspo number 1. Inspo number 2 is the Bridgertons are typically dressed in softer purples and blues and pinks, bisexual pastel colors. So this color is reminiscent of that. And then you have the Featherington family. They are typically dressed in citrus colors, but while the Bridgertons have more subtle patterns, the Featheringtons can be in more floral and ornate dresses. So this dress is the inspo for them. Okay, starting with the underdress, we are going to seam rip the top of this dress off of the bottom of this dress. We're gonna use the top, then we're gonna seam rip the skirt off, and we're going to attach those. I think that's gonna be the easiest first step. I'm very excited to get started.
Let's start with seam ripping up the sides of the skirt. We're doing this to remove some of the pleating and also to bring it in a bit to fit my waist. Sometimes seam ripping can take a second for me to get a hang of, but once I do, it's really fun to glide the seam ripper down the seams. Usually when you buy something professional, there's a couple seams that you have to get through. There's the main seam, and then there's also the serge stitch, which is a finishing stitch that helps to prevent fraying. As we're going up the side of the dress, you could see here I'm also seam ripping out the pocket. I'm keeping the pocket attached to the back of the dress, the part that we are not modifying. So don't worry, we are keeping the pockets in the dress. And the seam ripping I'm showing you, I already removed the bodice. So here you're seeing me seam rip that shiny outer layer of lilac fabric from that inner lilac layer. It was nice that this dress only had one inner lining. Sometimes evening wear can get really crazy with the amount of layers underneath. This one was extremely simple, which also helped with the silhouette I was going for. So yeah, we're keeping that inner lining, but we're going to have to reattach it once we do the alterations that we need to make. And I was using pins to keep the pleats in place because at this point I wasn't really sure if I was going to keep the pleating in the front. I ended up taking out a few. In hindsight, I wish I took out more. The reason I'm saying that is because people in my shorts comments have been telling me that it would have been more accurate if I took the pleats out. See, this is why I don't do the research, because you do it for me. But I was glad to learn that for the future. I just really like pleating and I'm not very good at making it myself, so it felt like a crime to take this pretty pleating out of the dress. But in favor of making it more accurate, I would have done that if I got a second go at this. The last step here is to just iron out the pleats that I chose to iron out. And this fabric ironed very easily. Everything is going really well so far. I just got done seam ripping and I started assembling some stuff on the dress form. So I seam ripped both dresses, top from bottom. Right now we're working on the bottom layer of the dress, which is the top of the floral dress and the bottom of the lilac dress. And as you saw me doing earlier, all these pleats back here, I removed some of them from the front of the dress, which we still need to pin on. Let me show you. We have the pockets, which I'm gonna try to keep in, even though Regency dresses definitely didn't have pockets. They're here, might as well use them. And then we have the fabric that is going to be the front of this dress. But just eyeballing it now, you can see, since I took out a lot of those pleats, if we're gonna eyeball this, oh, the AC just kicked on, sorry if you can hear it. Hopefully you can't. Anyway, if this is the center, since we took out all those pleats, look at how much extra fabric there is. So I gotta do a lot of pinning, figuring out where everything's going to be, and figuring out where this skirt is going to reattach down the side. But it's great we have all this fabric to cut off because we're going to need to use that to make the bodice of the top layer of the dress. All right, I'm going to pin this on and I'll see you over at the sewing machine. What you're seeing me sew right now starts up at the pocket and then goes all the way down the side of the dress to the bottom. Obviously, this was repeated on both sides, and you can see here there is a good amount of seam allowance and excess lilac fabric that we are going to have to trim off. And next, I put my Dr. Frankenstein powers to work, and I sewed the bottom of the lilac dress to the top of the floral dress. I'm starting in the back here where there are a lot of pleats, and the way I'm sewing this is going to create a visible seam. So I'm trying to make it as straight as possible. I sometimes have trouble with that, but I think I did a good enough job. And because the thread that we're using matches so well, it's visible, but it isn't that noticeable. I think it looked good even for a beginner like me. Then we had to reattach the zipper. This was kind of crazy that both zippers were the same length, so switching them was very, very easy. I don't know how I got so lucky, but with both layers of the dress, the zipper lined up perfectly and I just sewed it back into place. I was all ready to get started on the upper layer of the dress, but the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm realizing I need to take this in a little bit more. The silhouette is sitting a little bit too full, and it's because I've got this extra pleat here that is just unnecessary. I took some pleating out in the front. I didn't take any pleating out in the back, but I think I needed to. Yeah, on both sides, we're just getting this unnecessary volume, but this is a good thing. I definitely could use some extra lilac fabric for the bodice of the upper layer. This is going to give me that. It's a little bit of extra work, but it might solve some problems. And everything I'm about to do here to make this modification is stuff I've shown you before in this video. We're gonna do some seam ripping to undo this pleat. We unfortunately do have to seam rip what we just sewed, this seam here connecting the skirt. Then we'll just fit it a little bit closer to the body, re-sew everything. So I'll meet you back here once that's done. So off camera, I did more seam ripping, took out more pleats, re-sewed up the side of the dress, and now we just have some finishing touches for this dress. If we turn it inside out, there's a ton of trimming that needs to be done. There's some edges I think could be finished a little bit better. So right now we're focusing on the fusion between the top and the bottom of these dresses. There's a good amount of excess purple lilac fabric that I'm going to cut off all around the dress. And once that is cut off, I'm just going to tuck these edges underneath. I also have a layer of the lilac dress and the inner lining as well, just to make it a little cleaner and neater on the inside. And I'm using pins to keep it in place. And okay, the way that I sew it on is a little bit wild because normally you would want the side that you pinned facing upward so that you can easily remove the pins. But I was more concerned with what the visible seam was going to look like. And it's going to be running perpendicular to the other visible seam that I put in. So that neat little fold that we did is underneath with all those pins there, and I'm just feeling it with my hand and removing the pins underneath. Honestly, I was a little nervous that this wasn't going to work because it felt like a bad idea to not really be able to see what I was doing, but I think it turned out great actually. The inside was definitely a little bit wonky, but the outside was the most important, and that looked great. And then up the sides of the dress, when I was seam ripping, I mentioned a stitch called a serge stitch. To do a proper ooh, God, that's a hard word. Okay, we got this. To do a proper serge stitch, you need a special sewing machine called a serger. I don't have that, but a lot of sewing machines, mine included, which is the Singer Fashion Mate, has a stitch that looks like this. And this is pretty similar to a serge stitch. It's not as intense, but it gets the job done. That's what we're doing up the side of the dress, but I'm not terribly worried about fraying with this fabric. fabric. It looks like it would fray a lot, but it held up pretty well throughout this project. This is just better safe than sorry. Time to move on to the upper layer where we're going to have to make a bodice mostly from scratch. This is the bodice that I started with on the dress. Right now I'm seam ripping it. The pleats are sewed into place, and then obviously the different pieces are sewn together. So I'm also detaching the front of the bodice from the back of the bodice where you see the zipper. That piece I'm keeping completely the same, but the front of the bodice I'm going to completely deconstruct, and then I'm going to iron it out, see how much fabric we have, and start putting together a pattern for this bodice. Once I got the one side detached, I repeated those same steps on this seam here. Now that we're just dealing with the front of the bodice, it's really time to take it apart. There's an inner lining which I'm not going to keep because it's not the right shape. Well, I'm going to hold on to it, but I'm not going to use it for this project. But look at these pleats coming undone. You can see how much fabric I'm going to have, which is great because we're really working on scraps to make this bodice here. And once I got both of these pieces detached, I ironed them out, got those pleats out, and saw what I was working with. I was pretty impressed with the amount of purple fabric I had. And for this part, I'm actually going to pull up the design that I drew for this dress, which we're going to refer to because I wasn't really following any sort of method when I was putting the bodice together. I had an idea of the shape that I wanted, but it's going to be easier for me to refer to the drawing when showing the different portions that I'm working on. Okay, so this is all the fabric that I have to work with to make this bodice. Honestly, more than I thought. So this piece of fabric is going to be this section, which you see on the drawing. Using the cutting mat, each square is an inch, so I'm counting out 8 inches, plus half of that for seam allowance. I actually think seam allowances are supposed to be 1/4 inch, but you can always cut more, you can never cut less. Then I attached 2 long strips of fabric to either side of this piece. And you can also see on the piece in the middle off camera, I did iron down all of the side to make pinning a lot easier. So these 2 long strips of fabric that you're looking at are these 2 pieces on the drawing. They're not exactly the right shape right now, but we'll get them there. Once I pin them into place, I did cut off some excess fabric, which was risky because I didn't do a ton of measuring. But where you see me putting the pins is where the top 3 pieces on the bodice are going to connect to the belt around my waist. So I am ironing those seams down just like I did off camera with the piece in the middle. It makes pinning the pieces together much easier. And I'm going to follow the same technique. This is for that center belt. And if you can believe it, I actually measured a little bit here, just to make sure that the width was consistent across the board. And once it was, I ironed down the seams. These are little steps I used to skip, but now that I'm trying to be more professional, I don't skip the steps that make my life easier. So now we are pinning that belt into place, and we actually have all the pieces in place for the front of the bodice, but right now the shape isn't exactly correct. We need to bring it in a little bit for my arms. So I'm actually just going to use this dress, which has a very similar silhouette to what I'm trying to create. I'm really, just making a tank top. So I drew a guide with chalk. I cut those excess pieces off. And so now what you see me doing here is pinning and ironing down any of the open edges. I'm using the method where I roll the open edge in on itself so that it's hidden underneath. And I'm ironing it because that is going to make it a lot easier when I go over to the sewing machine, especially on this outer edge here, because it curves a little bit and it's kind of hard to keep it rolled under and keep those seams neat. So ironing really helps with that for when you move over to the sewing machine. And now I'm repeating on the other sleeve. I know I do this in such a weird way, but I use the pins to keep the fabric in place, and then it'll stay in place better once I iron it down, but it's still good to keep a couple pins in place. I keep calling them pins, they're clips. I keep doing that, I'm so sorry. And so as I said, we had all of the pieces for the front of the bodice, and now let's work on the pieces for the back of the bodice. This is these 2 pieces in the back. You can see the general shape that I'm looking for. It starts the same width as the strap in the front and then slowly tapers out. And again, I'm ironing everything down, which is especially helpful here because the way that I'm measuring these 2 pieces is by putting them on top of each other. The perfect eyeball method. Okay, what we have here is looking a little wild right now, but I'm seeing the vision, so I'm going to try to explain it to you. These 2 pieces right here are just those last 2 pieces You saw me ironing. Obviously, there's a lot of scrap here that I need to cut off, which is what I'm doing right now and will be the next step before I start sewing everything. Because you can see in a lot of places, I just have a lot of scrap that doesn't need to be there. That's way too much seam allowance, this as well. And we can start getting a better sense for the shape of this bodice once I've trimmed everything. The front as well, we were able to achieve in 4 different pieces. So we've got this front panel, the 2 sleeve panels, and this is going to be a belt around the waist, which is going to lead into the floral skirt. But we've got a lot of excess, so I'm going to start trimming and hopefully you can get a better sense of what this is going to look like. Hopefully that helps you see the vision, but now I've got a lot of sewing I need to do. I have all these lines here, around the base, up the side, all along the edges of these straps, and connecting the straps up top. So let's get to it. Now it's time to get to sewing. I don't know what I'm looking at here. Oh, I didn't know what I was looking at here. I was staring at this for a really long time, but I know now. I am first sewing on the belt piece to the rest of the bodice. Sorry that these shots are a little bit out of focus. I'm really bad at focusing with a sewing machine. I promise I'm getting better. Now we are sewing together the 2 straps, so this seam is going to sit directly on my shoulder. Now I'm sewing those seams up the side of the sleeve that you saw me clipping and ironing down before. And this line is connecting the strap to the back of the bodice, again up the side, closing up the seam around the armpit. I think there were 4 seams like that in total. And now we are on the other side, sewing on the strap to the back of the bodice right next to the zipper. And this is sewing up one side of my body and sewing up the other side of my body, which is the last bit of actual construction for the bodice. So now I'm going in and fixing any open seams, cutting off any excess fabric. So this is me closing off the seam for the straps when they are sewn onto the back of the bodice. Those were some open seams. Doing the serge stitch at the top of the strap on my shoulder, repeating on the other side with that serge stitch, doing the serge stitch up the side of the dress. And oh my God, please do not come for me. I know I'm sort of like pushing the fabric through the sewing machine here, which you're really not supposed to do. So don't come for me. Again, doing the serge stitch. I don't know why this fabric was so hard to get through. Sometimes the serge stitch is a little wonky. Whatever, these are not visible seams anyway. I did my best. And here is the last serge stitch up the side of the bodice. And the last step, back to this floral fabric. There was a center panel on this dress, so this was super easy. We just had to take that panel out. So this panel is going away, which will create that nice opening in the skirt that I wanted. And so we'll put that panel away for another project, and we took what was left over and we sewed it onto the back and sides of the bodice that we made. We attached it to the zipper in the back, and it's looking ready to be styled with the other dress that I made. So it's time for the reveal. Overall, I'm super pleased with how this project came out. There are a few things I would have done differently, but it's absolutely wearable. I probably would have taken the pleats out of the front, still something I absolutely could do. I could have made the lines a little bit straighter. I could have made the straps on the bodice fit just a tiny bit better. When you're looking up close, it isn't the most professional lines possible, but I do think that a lot of the visible seams look really good. And I'm proud of this construction, just from thrifted dresses with no pattern, and the dress is really easy to move in. That's always important to me when making a costume or a cosplay. How easy would this be for me to wear out to a party or to a convention? This one definitely passes that test. So to finish off the look, I styled the dress with this blonde wig. It felt very Daphne Bridgerton. Also this pearl necklace and some pearl earrings. Thanks for coming along with me making this dress. I had a lot of fun. And subscribe so you don't miss my next tutorial. My name is Leah, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.
Let it go. 얼어붙어 like whoa. 어지러워 I see 한여름에도 난 겨울 yeah, 너와 있을 때 I swear 제가 먼저 zero 폭설한 그 chill day